Hello, thanks for coming. I'm Ruby Wax, and welcome to At Home with Penguin. This is a live series where each week a writer invites you into their home and tells you about their routines. And well, that's about it. There's part of my home, but we don't have time for the full tour, but call me later and I'll show it to you. So, okay, I was a performer for 25 years, and I had my own show, and I had many guests. O.J. Simpson, Trump, that's worth seeing. Well, actually, he threw me off his plane when we were about 33,000 feet because it's a private jet, told me that he wanted to be president of the United States. So I started laughing, and he said, land the plane. But that's just one. I mean, I had many other interviews, and I went to Oxford University and got my degree in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And now I'm writing books about it and about neuroscience, which I studied, but I'm combining it with comedy, not dissimilar to what Bill Bryson does, except he's my God. So I'm trying to emulate him. Now I do shows around the country with my last book was How to Be Human, which you can buy. And I toured it for about 200 shows with a monk and a neuroscientist because they helped me write it. And the monk lives upstairs. So anyway, I wanted him to live here because he matches my sofa, but he's become my best friend. So he's upstairs. I hope he doesn't walk in because, he likes show business. What I want to maybe mention is that my autobiography, which I wrote many years ago, has been republished, and it's called How Do You Want Me? And then I have a new book coming out in September called And Now for the Good News, To the Future with Love. Aren't I timely? So that's coming out. And then I'll tell you what I've been up to in my day, and this gives me my motivation and keeps me alive, is that each day I run Frazzle Cafe, which is something I created about how many years ago? 4 years ago. And it was in actual cafes. So groups of 12 would meet up and down the country in Marks and Spencer's cafes for free. It's a charity. And we'd have a facilitator. And that became their kind of, their community. So they'd meet every 2 weeks, these small groups, and they felt that was their lifeline. And the catchphrase is, it's okay to not be okay. But I always think talking is half the cure. So we had that, and now we've gone on to Zoom. And I do it twice a day. So I do about 100 people each time, and it's still very intimate. And in the middle of it, we have breakout groups, which we used to have in the actual cafes where we had coffee. But now we put people into smaller groups, and they bond. And it's really touching. People just speak human instead of cocktail chatter. Or you have to ask how people's kids are, like you give a shit. Anyway, this is very touching, and that just warms my heart twice a day. And now we're looking for hosts to take on 12 people so we can really spread this around the country. So that's what motivates me. Changes I'll be taking forward after this ends, when it is. What will I do? I will stop trying to please people that really kind of don't feed me. If people make you uncomfortable, you can feel it. When you're really interested in something, you can feel it. So, for example, I do mindfulness every morning with a small group, and they're the ones who teach mindfulness in Parliament. So they know what they're doing, and every morning we do that, and that, again, touches me. And I love that. And I'll continue that. I've always done mindfulness. And also, I wrote a book, my next book, let's talk about that. My next book is called, which is coming out in September, And Now for the Good News, as I said before, To the Future with Love. And I'll read you, shall I read you a segment? I'm talking about my new book, which is my favorite book. And I wrote it for the last 2 years. I'll read you a little bit, and it'll be pretty clear what the book's about. So it starts off, can I be honest? That's how it starts. Yeah. Can I be honest? As far as fixing the world is concerned, I have no idea. I'm not an expert on fixing worlds. I'm dyslexic. So I get confused what letters stand for. IS is BLT, AA, BUPA. See, they're all the same to me. I usually can't tell who the good or the bad guys are. So, the last time I knew that was cowboys and Indians. And look what happened there. What I also know, but this is what I do know, is that the world isn't as bad as we've been bitching about. And from researching this book, I've managed to find out exactly where the good news lives, where the green shoots of hope are peeping through the soil of civilization and may just bloom into a brighter future. So my mission is to tantalize you out of the negativity zone and to paint a smiley face over your doomsday face. I'm here to tell you, behind the clouds, the sun still shines. We don't need to start packing now to go to Mars. I'm sorry, Mr. Musk. Nothing will change until we change the lens through which we see the world. My mission in writing this book is to find out where, as I said, the green shoots of hope are and who's tending them. It turns out this is a new worldview waiting in the wings to replace the old one. I just cross my fingers that I don't go AWOL, give away all my money, go off grid, live with gorillas. So that's the beginning of my book. And then I look for, this is over the last 2 years, what's going on that if we tend to it, will make a brighter future. So I went into technology, I went into education, there's in Finland, I did travel the world to see, how kids that we're training now will have jobs that don't even exist when they grow up. So they really are teaching these kids to understand their emotions and how to regulate the stress, because otherwise we'll just continue having these kids burn out. And there are schools all over the world that are really innovating new ways to teach. Power is with the team. All these things really connect with people working as a team at community, which we strangely enough have now, especially in my frazzle groups, even though we can't touch each other. People are really listening to each other, and there is compassion in the air. I just hope it lasts. And so business is even more interesting. There's a book called Conscious Capitalism and another one called Firms of Endearment. So I met the authors, and they told me which companies to go check out. And so I did. I worked at Patagonia, the sportswear company. And for 40 years, they really walked the talk. And then another chapter is health. I do the history of fads and then tell you what, I think is the real deal, including in agriculture. If we learn to not create these CO2 emissions and really make those foods viable rather than letting the big boys fool us and stuff sugar into us without us questioning it. And boy, are they big boys. Corporations are very tough, but I think with this book, I try to cut through it. And I'm going to follow some of my findings. I'm going to stay in an intentional community because there's a chapter about community, and there are new architects building buildings and rural design that really are connecting people. And I don't mean in any hippie camp. I mean really innovative. My relationship to thoughts is altered. So when I get my kind of poisonous self-thoughts that say I'm a failure, my mother was right, I'm not good enough, which I've now learned a lot of people have those recordings in their head. I sort of understand why we have those negative thoughts. I mean, with every human, we have out of about 5 thoughts, 4 are negative. And this is, again, left over from when we had to survive in the past. We had to be a little bit paranoid, to check what's a snake, what's a stick, what's dangerous. If we had big smiley faces, we wouldn't be here. So I have a little tolerance with myself and say, this is where I'm made. Those thoughts are quite transient. They're not solid facts. So when I have them, even now, they're coming through loud and clear. I've learned to lean back. You still have them, but they're more like a radio in another room rather than taking me hostage and sending me into a depression. Probably Alan Rickman, because he was my mentor for 30 years. And I met him when I was in the Royal Shakespeare Company playing an ashtray and some seaweed. But Juliet Stevenson was also some seaweed with me. We had small parts. Eventually, we got bigger parts because I wrote shows that Rickman directed, and he told me how to do comedy. And so he directed everything of mine for the next 30 years. So he saved my life. Otherwise, I don't have any talent, really. I just have a lot of chutzpah. I found what I found, which is, I forgive my parents. That was liberating because I saw what they were like as kids. And We wouldn't have been friends when they were young because my mom was a snob and too beautiful for me. But I understand why they might have been traumatized because they had to leave this beautiful whipped cream heaven when they were 18. And I understand why my mother was very angry when she got to America. I mean, she hated America. Oh, yeah, definitely. You can't just do it once and then hope it works. It's a muscle that develops in your brain. It's like going to a gym. You can't just do one sit up and get a six-pack. So because I practice it when I do go on stage and I start to lose my lines, I notice, because I observe a lot, that my mouth is drying up, my heart beats. And the minute we get stressed, we get more stressed because then we're stressed about stress. Sometimes I'll notice it, and I know this is weird, when you send your focus to a physical sensation, the cortisol comes down, the stress goes down a little bit. So I'm used to that. So I send my focus to the contact of my feet on the ground, which actually grounds you, because the minute you go to a physical sensation, you're present. I mean, you can't hear something yesterday or tomorrow. Listening is also a sense. The minute you listen, the thoughts count down. They'll come back, but for a minute. So when I do that, I can feel my cortisol come down because the audience starts smiling. My head clears and I'm back on track again. So yes, it has helped, but I have to practice it all the time to keep that muscle strong. Find me on Twitter and give me a tweet to let me know. At Home with Penguin will continue every week. So please check Penguin's social media for a full-time lineup. And tune in next Tuesday when the guest will be Scarlett Curtis, who's very brilliant and very young, very attractive. Until then, I'm going offline and I'm not spending my evening with my book. I wrote it, but I will be reading Bill Bryson, who, it doesn't get any better. I can't even be jealous. He's that good. So take care and happy reading. And don't forget to buy my books and come on Frazzled. You go to frazzledcafe.org and immediately they'll sign you up to come online. And I run those charities. I run that charity and I'll run that meeting for now. So please join me.